We want to make sure that our world is taken care of, right? We want to build them into nice human beings, as well as, they need to start thinking about real estate and whatnot, like how they can help and how they can also survive, right?
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I am your host, as always, Yonah Weiss. Excited to be here today with Alpesh Parmar. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Yonah, for having me.
It's my pleasure. Now, among other things, Alpesh is not only a real estate investor, which is how we got to know each other years ago.
Yes.
Through obviously the cost seg, doing some things that had great returns for the cost seg, mobile home parks, RV parks, that kind of stuff. And we can get into that a little bit. But something fascinating that caught my attention a couple months ago, or about a month ago actually, is that you wrote together with your kids, I believe, a book for kids about money and finances. And this is a topic that I'm really excited about. I have kids. I have 6 kids. So, it's something that I'm constantly looking for ways to kind of educate them on their own level in the finances aspect, which is something they're not getting in school very much. And just excited to learn more about growing the money tree for kids. This is just such an awesome, fascinating topic. But before we do that, that's just kind of a prelude to what we're going to go on in the episode for anyone who wants to tune in. But before we get to that, why don't you give our listeners a little background, who you are, how you got involved in real estate, and we'll get into that.
Sure. Yeah. So, I'm based out of San Francisco Bay Area. Of course, like you, I have immigrated to US more than, I would say, 23 years ago. So it's been a while. Now I have spent more than half of my life here. And I am from IT world, of course, living in the San Francisco Bay Area and being an Indian descent, right? You can guess that, of course, I work in IT or I have worked in IT. But long story short, got laid off back in 2009. And that's when I realized that you got to have some kind of passive income or some kind of, multiple sources of income. So I slowly started thinking about it. But the first thing I did was start my own business on IT side, right? So now I started relying on myself, and since then I have not worked W-2 for anyone, which is a good and bad thing. Some people look it as bad. But yeah, real estate came to me back in 2011, and 2015 is when I started going in, pretty much that I really just want to do this. And, it started with single family homes, how we all start, then small duplexes, 9-unit apartment buildings, which one of which I still own, and then slowly into apartment buildings. And now we focus on mobile home parks mostly, some RV parks, senior housing facilities. But I think mobile home park is one of the most recession resistant asset out there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's how it started, from a layoff, thinking about what else can I do and all those. And now that, real estate, then I, of course, have my podcast, and I have had you on my show as well. It's been 3 years.
It was a while ago. I was just thinking about that.
It's been a while. During COVID, when all of us were sitting at home, of course. But yeah, so just started investing and then started teaching my friends about it. And then somehow I ended up teaching my kids about it.
What was your, how old were your kids when you first kind of started bringing up the topic of, of money or finances, economics, whatever you want to call it?
In the hindsight, I wish I could have done it sooner, but I think COVID made it happen. Because I have been working from home back since 2015, but they were not at home watching me what I do. So come May of 2020, now they keep watching me. I'm recording podcasts. I'm just talking to people, oh, what happened at this property and whatnot. And they think, at first they thought I don't do anything, right? Because I'm always available. But then they realize, okay, how are we surviving, right? So they asked me the question, how do you make money? And I said, okay, that's a great question. I wish I would have started that discussion. But so we bought Monopoly, Payday, and Cash Flow Quadrant, and a lot of other money-related games. But I started playing with them. because I just didn't want to tell them, or show what I do,
Right.
because you got to talk in their language. And they were 7 and 10. So, my 7-year-old was really young enough where, of course, she wouldn't understand anything I would tell her. So we started playing, and every time Monopoly, they saw me that I love real estate. And they started talking about, and I'm like, yeah, see, people live in my property. And we have one property here. And they're like, oh, wow, you have property in Atlanta? You have property here? Like, yeah. So the discussion started and continued. So it wasn't easy, right? Because you got to dumb it down, and not,
Sure.
I don't mean to say dumb it down, but pretty much talk in their language.
Of course.
And it was hard for me. So what I started doing is I will talk to them, and then I will ask them to, tell me what they understood, right? In their words. And we started writing it down, and that's how the book came about.
That's
Because
so
we
cool.
just started writing it down, and when it was like 60 pages, I'm like, man, this could be something big. So it started during COVID.
That's amazing. That's awesome. And the truth of the matter is, obviously, kids understand games pretty well, and that's a great language to
Yes.
use to kind of bridge that gap. But it also opened what's amazing is that kids, when they're in the middle of playing a game, it's also just a great opportunity to have dialogue with them in general, because kind of they're relaxed, their mind is kind of focused on the game, and at the same time their mind is open to the conversation. I find that so fascinating that you took it to the next level of not just playing the game and talking about it, but then actually writing those questions and those answers down. That's amazing.
Oh, thank you. What you said makes so much sense, right? I would be like literally sitting on my desk, and they were sitting right besides me on the floor playing the game, right? Because I'm also working, trying to do stuff. And then they're like, okay, your turn. I'm like, okay, here you go. And then if something interesting happens, I will sit down on the floor with them and explain to them, okay, this is what happened. See, I bought the property in New York. Now I own it. Now, if you come here, you got to pay me rent.
That's great. That's awesome. And Monopoly is such a great game to understand real estate. And, you pass go, you collect $200, which, is actually quite a bit. But I think that lesson in of itself is something that I never really thought about as a kid too much. But later in life, I thought about, that's like the W-2. You pass go, you collect the 200 and just keep going around in the circles. But you got to do something else. You got to buy. I mean, the main thing of the game is buy as many properties, as you can, and do whatever you can to buy more, because the rental income that's going to come after that, the cash flow is going to be king.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
Such a great analogy. So you started this book, Growing the Money Tree. What are some of the principles? I just love to hear, because obviously they're principles for kids, but they're also for adults. I'm sure it's just in the language that they can understand. But what are some of the principles discussed there in the book, the concepts?
Sure. No, and that's a great question. So even though we targeted this book towards 8 to 12 years old, right? Because that's what, my kids' ages were at that time. But I have had friends who picked up the book and had no clue about real estate, had no clue about cryptocurrencies, and they learned a lot out of it, right? Because, I tried to put it in really simple language. So the principles were, you may have to work W-2 when you start, but you have to start thinking about saving and investing, right? Every time you make money, you want to think about what all can you do. And there is a game called, of course, Growing the Money Tree game in the book, which the teacher, Mr. Price, plays with the kids in the school, right? And these two girls, Kiara and Tessa, they are named after my daughters, Kea and Twisha. And they are 6th graders in the school, and they go through this game where they are comparing stocks and real estate. And by the way, both of them win. I'm not trying to say that real estate is the best and you should not do stocks, even though I personally don't do stocks, but I have my 401k where, I have my fund manager manages my stocks, right? Because you want to diversify. We keep talking about diversification.
Mm-hmm.
And the true diversification not only happens just by investing in real estate, but also, going a little bit wider, right? So we talk about stocks and real estate, but we go into government bonds, cryptocurrencies, collectibles, private funding, crowdfunding investments, all kind of stuff. And believe it or not, by going through all this, my kids, even though I love real estate, yeah, everyone is different. My younger one loves stocks, and we started their stock account at my account, and they both have bought a lot of stocks so far in a year and a half. And my older one loves business because I also talk about running business.
Right.
So she loves business, and it was funny that they asked me for a loan once they learned about it, and they started their first business a couple of years ago, a jewelry making business, and they were profitable in the first year.
Wow. That's so cool.
So, I think the principles are, don't just think about job. You may have to start with the job, but you should always think about, how you can create multiple streams of income.
Sure.
Yeah, by, saving and investing. Spending should come last if it's not important, right? Of course, you need a roof over your head, you need a food to eat. But that's important, but anything above all, I think you should try to invest. That's where it started, and now I'm hoping that their IRA grows a little bit so that we can invest in real estate together.
That's amazing. That's so cool. That will be so, come full circle to when they come and ask you for a loan to buy real estate or to joint venture on a property. That's amazing. Wow. Starting a business, and that's something interesting as well, because I don't think in our circles it's spoken about enough. You talk about people who are entrepreneurs, right? Real estate investors in general are entrepreneurs, but at the same time, there are a lot of businesses out there. I have a lot of friends that buy businesses, and that are very, profitable, and it's its own kind of niche, but that can be extremely profitable as well.
I agree. And I, by heart, I'm an entrepreneur. I love real estate. My 50 to 60% of my portfolio is real estate, but I do have stocks, cryptos, and I do have businesses, either small stake in the business or I have started business and they have failed. Recently, of course, I'm treating this as a business. It's not just book for me. Of course, I want to leave a legacy.
Sure.
But, we are building the website. The goal is to have a video book at some point. Goal is to have video courses for kids at some point, right? So we are, I'm teaching them that we are trying to build this as a business.
That's so cool. And it's so necessary. I mean, what's been the response? Have your kids had response from any of their friends who've read the book? Have you gotten any feedback on that level yet?
So yes, on Amazon, of course, we don't have a lot of reviews, but we got 5-star reviews, a lot of them, as well as the response has been that this is so much needed.
Yeah.
Even their friends and their parents too. Because in real estate, I've spoken not only about just single family, I've explained mobile home parks, I've explained flipping, I've explained senior housing to self-storage and all of that, right? So that just by itself is more than one chapter. So response has been great. We got 5-star review from the readers' favorite. So we already put the medallion on the book now. So anyone who buys the book now will have a medallion saying that this is one of the top book with the readers' favorite. And we got 5-star reviews from real estate investor and CEO of Wealth Formula, Buck Joffrey, as well as we got 5-star review from Chris Lustrino. He's the CEO of King's Crowd Capital, and they do private crowdfunding. So I reached out to people in different niches, right? Because the book has all of this covered. And actually, Chris said that, he would love to buy like 10 copies signed by me because he would love to hand it out to people. So far, the response has been great.
That's awesome. That's such a good feeling. And the fact that you're turning it into a business as well, I think is really smart because there's a lot of opportunity there. Yes, it's a book. You can sell it on Amazon for, I don't know how much, but it's probably not very profitable because I know Amazon takes a huge cut from that as well. But growing it into, online courses for kids, so necessary. I mean, think about it. They're not being taught this really anywhere.
Nope.
And financial freedom, independence is something that I think the younger generation really needs because I think the world is changing at such a fast pace, especially with the introduction of, AI and things. It's going to be hard to have, the same types of jobs that, people had before. But being a business owner or, being a real estate investor, the opportunities are always going to be there.
I agree. And it's so important, like how you pointed out, because this is the next generation. Mm-hmm. We are going to leave our world to this, young people, right? We want to make sure that our world is taken care of, right? We want to build them into nice human beings, as well as, they need to start thinking about real estate and whatnot, like how they can help and how they can also survive, right? As you said, before our jobs were lasted like 10 years. Now, if we are thinking, oh, my daughter may become doctor, it may change in 5 years. The AI would be a doctor. And I already like Intuitive Surgical has a robot for 10 years, which does all the prostate surgeries, right? And
Wow.
with better precision than the best doctor out there in the world. And this was 10 years ago. Right now, in 5 years, not sure what will happen.
Yeah. It's pretty scary to think about it, though. If you really kind of go down that rabbit hole. But wow, that's fascinating. In your real estate investing career, that you've kind of gone full time in for close to 10 years now. Just kind of I know you started on your own buying single families and then multifamilies, but have you employed like the syndication model as well, bringing on private investors, or do you still prefer to buy properties kind of on your own?
Great question. So since 2019, pretty much I have been syndicating. So, we raised capital. It started with multifamily, then Bitcoin mining funds, and now pretty much mostly focused on mobile home parks. Last year, we bought a couple of mobile home parks between 4 million to 10 million, and all of that money was raised pretty much, right? So yes, syndication is one of the best way to go if you really don't have time. Because believe me, when everyone says that, yeah, real estate, you can have a property manager and it's a
Right.
passive income, it's not. It doesn't require as much work as stocks like day to day,
Mhm.
but it still does require work. And it requires a lot more work upfront, right? Because it's an illiquid investment. So people have to understand before you get in, before you buy, you got to go through, thorough underwriting, analyzing everything, analyzing basically the heck out of everything. So yes, I love syndication. And the biggest reason is I'm able to scale up faster. And second is, of course, you guys, cost segregation, right? Because if I'm buying the larger properties, that's when I'm going to see all the benefits of that 100%, now 80% and depreciation. And I think this year it's going to be 60% bonus depreciation in year one. So yeah, by buying larger properties, that's how, we see the most benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And it's really fascinating because some people invest for the tax benefits, just themselves. And being, mobile home parks having such a high quality of those, that's pretty incredible to use that. And you talked about, we mentioned kind of in passing earlier that you also host a podcast called Wealth Matters, which I was a guest on. I was thinking about it just recently. I was like, wait a second, I should invite, Alpesh on my podcast. It's been so long since I was a guest on his. And yeah, I mean, it's been going on for a while. You still doing it consistently?
Yes. So we took a break for last couple of months, just that because I was so focused on the book.
Mm-hmm.
But we had enough episodes, so we are planning to restart it again because I just wanted to turn my attention to this book because I give it all in this book for last 1 year. But yeah, I loved the podcast. I loved meeting folks like you, networking, and making great friends out of the podcast, actually.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's one of the things I love about the podcast as well, is you're able to create and develop those relationships with the people who are guests on your show. That's awesome. So you also, you do, like you said, the syndication model, buying mobile home parks, doing the podcast. What would you say if you talked about the diversification and about having multiple streams of income? And it sounds like you got a lot going on, right? What's the best way? I mean, people hear something like this and they're like, wow, how does a person have time for all of that, right? Because, it's like you retire from or you get fired, whatever it is, you quit from your W-2, and then it's like, okay, now I have a new job, but there's multiple things going on. I mean, how are you able to scale that and balance everything?
It's so difficult, and I get this question asked like all the time. Because it's just difficult. I know people think that, once you're out of 9 to 5, you're almost available all the time. It's not true, actually. You are working all the time. The only thing you have is the time freedom.
Right.
Because you can take off as and when needed, but then you may be working over the weekend as well to cover. So it's hard, but important thing for me was to realize that mornings are so necessary, that morning time. So I read the book called The Miracle Morning. I'm pretty sure you must have read it. Hal Elrod, one of my most favorite book. And also the other book, The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. That's another great book. They both talk about, starting your day as early as possible so
Mhm.
that then you can cover as much as possible when, it's quiet, when you have the best focus out, right? And when you have no one bothering you, right? So I try to wake up at 5. Nowadays, it's been difficult. But
Right.
when I did the Ironman race a couple years ago, I was waking up at 4:30, hitting the gym at 5:30 and trying to get my workouts done by 7, right? So a formula here, like if you can start at 5, then you have a lot of time. And that's what I try to do, balance my time, and start with the most energy, finish the most important task. There's another book called Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy, right?
Yeah.
And it talks about taking that most important task, the task which is going to make 80% difference in your life, that 80-20 Pareto principle. I'm pretty sure, of course, all your smart listeners would have heard of it, right?
Sure.
So that is what I target, because it's very hard. Sometimes you feel like 24 hours are not enough, but if you can target, the most important task, and the second is leveraging other people.
Yeah.
I was so bad, and almost all of us are, that, oh, why should I hire people? Why should I pay them? Right? Oh, I can keep all this money to myself, right? And I did that with my IT business. And I realized when I could not grow any further, I didn't want that to happen in my Wealth Matters or this business, Money Tree books. So
Right.
I have hired the right kind of people who know their stuff so that I don't have to learn from scratch. Or it may not be worth my time when I can pay them $20 an hour, $15 an hour to take care of something. My time is way more valuable than
Sure.
that, right? So I think those two are important, the mornings and hiring the right people, or,
Absolutely.
building the right team.
For sure. I mean, you see that as a business owner, but it's like almost it's difficult. I don't know what the setback is. We talk about this a lot on the podcast. Actually, the book Who Not How, it's got
Yes,
mentioned
it's a
several
great book.
times. But it's like, where does this kind of self-limiting belief come from that everyone thinks I have to do everything by myself?
Yes.
Right? I don't know where it comes from, but it's like we all played with it. And as soon as we can release ourselves from that, self-limiting belief, it opens up so many doors. It's just incredible.
No, it's important. I've started some businesses where I just offered like 50% partnership to people, saying that, you can, I'll help you with everything, but you got to do the work, right? I'll
Mhm.
guide you, I'll help you. But the idea is that because, you can rely on me and I can rely on that person, right?
Right. So important. Well, I want to transition now to what we call the final four. And the time flies by here on the Weiss Advice podcast, especially when you're talking about fun stuff. But
It does.
the first question I have for you is, what is the worst job that you ever had?
Oh, man. When I moved here, 9/11 happened actually. I was at World Trade Center 2 days before 9/11 on top of the building. I still remember that was the Sunday and 9/11 was Tuesday. So I was in New Jersey living that point. And once that happened, I lost my job in IT world and I started doing masters in computer science. So that's when I had to find a job. And funny, there were no jobs, nothing, right? So I ended up working at a liquor store once.
Okay.
And one, I don't drink at all. I hate alcohol. I have never tasted. And second, that job required me to be in the cooler almost all the time.
Oh boy.
So because man, people will come and empty out the cooler, the cans of beer and whatnot. And I would be like, every hour, I'll be spending 45 minutes in the cooler, basically on top of the hour. So that was the worst job I have ever had. And I don't want to do that again.
Yeah, it does not sound like a fun thing to do. But you learn, I guess. Learning experience.
Yes.
Cold learning experience. Second question, what's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift? And I know you've already mentioned quite a few,
Tons.
but you can go a little deeper on any one of those or choose something else.
I would say The Miracle Morning is one of the top ones, right? But the other one, I think this is my second most favorite book. It's called The Go-Giver.
Oh, yeah.
The Go-Giver, amazing book. And I think you are a prime example of one of the go-givers, right? Because you always think about giving on LinkedIn and everywhere, because you know that at some point you are going to get it back. We live in the world of instant gratification where
Right.
we think that if I give something, that person has to give me something back right away in a week, in a day, or in a month or whatever. But the book talks about how it's so important to give it and then forget about it. If you give, you are going to get something back. Maybe in a year, maybe in 5 years, you never know, right? But the idea is don't think about it.
Right.
And so giving is so important. And I try to embody that spirit now in my life pretty much, I would say, for the last 6-7 years. I try to do again. I'm not, as I said, you are one of the prime example, and I know some other people too. I'm not there, but I try my best. And I think, whenever I forget about it, I take out the book and read it again. It's a short read, like 80 pages. So it's not too bad.
Right. Yeah. It's a fun book. And it's a story also, which makes it so much easier to read. So if you haven't checked out The Go-Giver, highly recommended. It's definitely been mentioned on the show before, but we'll put it in the show notes. Really, really awesome book. I enjoyed it. Funny thing is about that book is, you mentioned that I'm a prime example of that. People kept mentioning this book and I was like, okay, yeah, it makes sense to me. Like, this is what I do anyways. And
right.
and then I finally read the book and I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But it's absolutely right. Like, give altruistically without even thinking about getting anything in return. Yeah, because you'll get back tenfold what you give if you have that mindset. I honestly, truly believe that. And so definitely awesome book there. Third question for you is, what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
That's a great question. So aside from real estate, I am a fitness freak, right? Well as, I did Ironman a couple of years ago. I work out every day for 6 days a week. I'm pretty strict about my diet. So I've been living vegan lifestyle for 7 years. I pretty much only use plant-based diet. Other than that, I always want to learn guitar. But it's just, as you said, it's how do you balance all the time? Can't get to that point where I'm like, I finish all this work out, focus on my food, and then do I have some time to learn guitar? But guitar is something I really want to pick up at some point.
Yeah, it's so much fun to play guitar, to play any musical instrument. So, but you do have to spend, a significant amount of time, like daily, or at least, a few times a week to really get it. You practice and get better at it. So, well, I hope you do find the time, make the time, because if it's something you want to do, you'll get a lot out of it.
Yes.
And fourth and final question, what does success mean to you?
Wow, that's a deep question, Yonah. So success, I think for everyone, the definition is different. For me, the success definition is, are you in best financial health? Are you in your best physical health? And are you in your best mental health, right? I consider this as a triangle or a tripod. If one of the leg is broken or wobbly, then you're not going to perform at your best. So for me, the successes are all three legs aligned. You don't want to have all the money in the world, but you can't enjoy, you can't even stand up, right? Or, you are having issues with your family and friends so that, you are lonely and alone, right? So it's very important for me. The success is balancing that tripod, making sure that I'm trying my best to keep everything aligned.
Yeah. Wow. I love how you said that, because yes, everyone has a different definition of success, but I don't think I've ever had anyone kind of put it so succinctly in that triangle, the tripod metaphor, because it's so true. I mean, if you can't enjoy what you have, if you're not healthy, if you're not in a good state of mind, and if you don't have your finances, I mean, that people think of, I remember when I was broke and, in debt and trying to run around, figure out how I'm going to, make sure the check doesn't bounce,
Right.
You can't think about anything else right at that point. It's like very difficult. So totally get that. That's awesome. Alpesh, has been really a lot of fun catching up with you. Where can our listeners find you or reach out to you if they want to?
Sure. So, of course, I would say please go and buy the book, and especially review on Amazon. But the book website is www.moneytreebooks.com. So that is the book website. And if you want to reach out to me as well on my Wealth Matters site, then it's WealthMatters.com. Wealthmatters.com is shortened. So yeah, I would love to hear from your listeners. And as always, it's my pleasure chatting with you, Yonah.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to put both those sites in the show notes. So if anyone wants to reach out, highly recommend this book. I'm going to check it out. I haven't yet, but definitely always looking for a good good books to kind of read to the kids and learn for myself. So appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your wealth of knowledge.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And to our listeners, you guys are awesome for sticking around all the way to the end. I appreciate you. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, connection request, Yonah Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.